Hello, I'm Forrest. I've got a problem. I didn't sing that. I don't know why I didn't sing that. Normally, I open up the show and I go, I've got a problem. I did it there. I'm not going to edit it, though. It's not true. I do edit the podcast, but I don't have time. You know what? I just don't feel like it. How about that? Thanks for being here, everybody. Everybody that has been listening since the beginning or a long time, thanks for being here. And new people. There are definitely new people listening. I can see it growing each week on YouTube and on the audio portion. And I thank you for being here. As I always say, if you are enjoying the podcast, please give it a little rating, put a comment, especially on YouTube, put some comments. I know somebody put engagement under a couple episodes ago, and I appreciate that. I'm pretty sure that was in response to me prodding people to do that. So supernatural engagement that we're doing there. But if you're enjoying the podcast, tell other people that you think might find this podcast interesting or useful or helpful. Or not. You don't have to. Just listen. What else is going on? Oh, I'm going to be on the road. So go to forrestshaw.net and come out and see me do stand-up comedy if you're interested. Boise, Idaho this week. Then I'm on a long road trip where I go to, oh my gosh, Austin, Plano, Texas, LaGrange, Texas, Bastrop, Texas, bunch of Texas states. I'll be visiting my aunt out there. Then I go all the way to Florida, and it's Sarasota, Key West, Fort Myers, Boca Raton, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Fort Pierce. I think Cocoa Beach is in there, Winter Haven. Tons of dates in Florida. So many dates. Come check me out there. On the way back, I think I'm going through Mississippi and Louisiana. I have never done comedy in Mississippi, and I'm pretty sure I'll have that date on the calendar soon. So that'd be interesting. There's only like 2 states I think I haven't done comedy in: Alaska, Mississippi. I'm pretty sure, and maybe North Dakota. So that'll be fun to mark that off. Put a pin on the map. If you're interested in donating money to help the podcast run, you can do that. You don't have to, but you can at forrestshaw.net. There's a donate button in the podcast section. And that's it for all that. All that housekeeping, as they call it. I have a guest today that is Aaron Gilbert, who's a psychoanalyst that was nice enough to do the podcast. And I'm really excited to have done this podcast where it's kind of like when I had Jonathan Cohen on and it was, I like having non-addicts on the show, but people that can help us or at least spark some sort of idea or interest in your mind. And I think therapy is very important. I think therapy is a very important component for recovery in addiction. And so I encourage people to do that in addition to whatever they're doing. Or it could be the only thing you do. But I just think that it is important. And I had an interesting discussion with Mr. Gilbert. And you know what I didn't ask him? I should have asked him, and it's too late. I always do this intro afterwards. From the previous podcast I used to do, I don't know about that with Jim Jeffries. We'd have a lot of people that had doctorates on. Some of them were medical doctors, but also sometimes they were doctor of philosophy or doctor of what. And Jim used to always make jokes about that. But then I would always ask him, do you want me to address you as doctor whatever? And I did not ask Aaron Gilbert, my guest, if he had a doctorate and if he wanted to be addressed that way. So Aaron, if you're watching this back, I apologize if I did not address you properly. He was very chill. I think you'd be fine with it. Hi, Aaron. Hi again. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. I hope you get something out of it. I hope it sparks some sort of idea or interest in you to seek therapy if you need it. Doesn't even have to be for addiction. Could be for something else. I think it's really important. And I will see you guys on the other side. My guest today is Aaron Gilbert. He is a seasoned psychotherapist and the founder of Boston Evening Therapy Associates, otherwise known as BETA, one of Massachusetts' most respected mental health practices. Aaron specializes in helping young professionals improve emotional and physical well-being through accessible, actionable insights. His work centers on the power of psychotherapy, daily rituals, physical health, and the importance of clarity and personal values. Aaron is also the developer of the Purpose, Acceptance, and Clarity PAC model, a framework used in BETA's innovative single-session coaching protocol. If you want to find out more information about these things and Aaron Gilbert, you can visit his website, bostoneveningtherapy.com. Aaron Gilbert, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Forrest. Great to be with you.
I ask every guest this question, and I'll be interested to see what your answer is. Sorry. What's your problem? The name of my podcast is I've Got a Problem. So,
It's my problem.
yeah, what's your problem?
So it would make for a long show. I think probably negative thoughts would be my problem. Sort of occasional kind of unwelcomed negative thoughts, but working through it.
That's great. I've always, that was exciting for me to ask a psychotherapist that question. So, um, can you tell me a little bit of background about you and like what you do just first?
Yeah. So I founded the practice Boston Evening Therapy Associates in 2007. And it was just me at the beginning, and now we have a number of therapists, and we see people all across Massachusetts. We've seen tens of thousands of people over the many years, and work with all kinds of presentations, including addictions, but primarily things like depression, anxiety, trauma history, relational dysfunction, etc. And we've also just recently started a service that I'm kind of excited about. It's a single session coaching protocol, just one meeting, 90-minute session, focus on purpose, acceptance, and clarity, developing those three pillars in a person's life to enhance meaning and peace. Um, and Yeah, that's me. I studied philosophy in college and then went to social work school, graduate school in Boston, and yeah, that's my story, more or less, professionally anyway. I
Yeah.
could go into a lot of other stuff, but yeah, for those purposes, that's me.
Um, I am a big proponent of therapy from a young age. I did therapy. I grew up with my mom left my dad when I was very young. He was abusive to her, and then I had some behavioral issues because of that. Just kind of trying to figure out what was going on in my life, and so I started very young, and then I continued. I've had plenty of gaps. I haven't consistently gone to therapy, but I'm a big proponent of it. I'm a big advocate of it. But I think a lot of people, and I think people that are addicts specifically should go to therapy as well, even if they're in 12-step programs, things like that. But some people think therapy doesn't. I have friends that they say they don't think therapy works, or they think it's a scam or waste of time, or someone's just listening. What would you say to those people?
Well, I mean, I guess I'd most want to know how they develop that perspective. I mean, I think it's a very individual point of view. If they had a bad experience, or if they heard things indirectly, or how they came to see things that way. Um, you know, uh, I think anytime you're working on improving yourself, working on understanding yourself better, whatever format that comes in, it doesn't have to be therapy. But I think the good thing about therapy is that's the singular focus of it, where there's no other purpose than what are the issues, um, what is the struggle, what does success look like, what does improvement look like, what is your vision of a better life, um, and how can we make progress in that towards those things. Um, it's
Yeah,
certainly not a guarantee. Maybe, and and maybe things like addiction, when there's an immediate kind of emergent kind of crisis where you really just have to want to stay sober. You really have to stay sober. That could be the primary thing that just needs to happen first. Maybe people aren't ready for therapy. I mean, therapy is sort of much more wide ranging and kind of looking for base causes and base um, foundational problems that need to be addressed, usually over a period of time. Sometimes people don't have that time, sometimes, or they don't feel like they have that time to invest. So, I mean, I can appreciate people having a negative perspective on it, but it's something you got to be ready for. But I think when you're ready for it, if you're ready to invest and you're ready to do the work, it can be very helpful.
Yeah, I think part of it is, yeah, being ready for it. I think people are afraid for whatever reason, maybe is I think my mom is, or my mom was this way, is I was very comfortable just kind of opening up to somebody, even if it was a stranger, which I think that might be some of the issues that people have. And specifically with addiction, I think that's a big part of it too, because we're so secretive, you know?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. I mean, and I think that that actually is the first order of business in good therapy is you have to establish a rapport and a connection. Um, because you're right. I mean, when you first start with a therapist, they're just a, glorified stranger. Um, I think a good therapist can help create a space that feels safe and that feels welcoming and that feels that it's okay to take some risks. But yeah, I mean, I think if a person is very suspicious or guarded or secretive, um, or has had a lot of bad experiences with people uh, where they've been untrustworthy or have betrayed them, that's going to come across probably in the early sessions. And I think that's probably a reason. My guess would be that's a reason why a lot of people have maybe negative experiences early on with therapy. Is like the therapist does something that reminds them of somebody else that screwed them over, or they use a certain word the same way the other person did, and all of a sudden they get kind of rejected. Um, but
Mm.
um, but yeah, you can't do anything in therapy until you have some trust. I agree with that
Yeah.
for sure.
Do you think The Sopranos hurt or helped therapy? Did you see The Sopranos? Did you watch
Yeah,
that show?
yeah.
It felt like that wasn't like the best for you guys. Yeah.
I always thought, yeah, it's funny. I like the show. I always felt that the therapy part was the weakest part of the whole show. I, I
Yeah.
I never, I couldn't. He never seemed ready to participate, and I didn't like the therapist either. But he never seemed to get anything out of it, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah. I
So
think to be fair though, just not the hard one, is I think a real therapy section wouldn't make, or more closely accurate would not make for good television. So that's why they had to do that.
there have been a few.
Huh?
God, I can't remember. I wish I could remember, but I have seen just a few good representations of good therapy.
What's the one
Mostly
with
been
Robert De Niro and Billy Crystal? It's Analyze You. I don't know if
oh
that
yeah.
it was a comedy. Uh,
Analyze this.
yeah. Oh, analyze this. Yeah. Well, analyze you. Okay. Um, what role do you think? I have an opinion on this, like my opinion. What role do you think therapy plays compared to medication or rehab programs? My personal opinion is, I like. I honestly have never been on medication for my addiction for gambling, or depression or any. I haven't been on medication for anything. I've been told that maybe I could use medication, but I never have. But I have used a combination of therapy and quote unquote rehab programs, like 12-step programs. And that's what's really worked for me because I got my one on one kind of, where I can work stuff out. And I also got community and group kind of like networking, for lack of a better word. But what role do you think therapy plays?
Well, maybe I'm biased, but I don't. I think that therapy, and I'll use when I say therapy, I'll use that to inclusive of community and or community person interpersonal kind of therapeutic interaction. I think that's would be much more important than medication specifically um, for addictions. I mean, of course, there are addictions. Um, I mean, there are medication that's very specific about for relapse, um, sort of alcohol mostly, but I don't think they go to the root of the issue. I and mostly, and I think when they talk about medications for people that with addictions, I don't think they're usually talking about medications for the addiction itself. It's usually for the underlying kind of co-occurring stuff like depression and anxiety. So it'd probably be more treating that, and indirectly that would hopefully be helping with the addictions. But
Well, can I just say,
yeah,
I've because my algorithm is the way it is and things pop up in my phone and feed, I have seen lots of, these are videos on social media and things like that, but they say that Ozempic, for instance, could help addicts
really.
because it's just some videos that I'm not saying this is real, but that specifically gambling, but also
Hmm.
alcoholics, drug addicts, because there's some sort of receptor. I don't know enough about it to even speak
Oh,
to it,
that's
but it's like,
really, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting that, like, yeah, and that happens a lot. There's medications that are created for a certain purpose, and they end up being effective by chance for other things. So that well could be. I had not heard that. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I remember there was a medication for restless leg syndrome. I always thought this was funny because when I first started doing comedy, I wasn't good enough to make a joke about it, but it was for restless leg syndrome, and one of the side effects was may cause compulsive gambling. I remember that was a side effect, and I was like, "This is the worst medication ever." So that's like one of the worst side effects I've ever heard, besides death, obviously. But yeah,
But you
so
won't have restless leg while you're putting down the bets. That's the good
yeah,
news.
yeah. You won't have restless leg, but you'll be sleeping on the sidewalk. You won't have. So that's the joke. All right, I just wrote it, Aaron. Um, I didn't mean to cut you off there with the role therapy plays with addiction.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not expert in this, but I guess that if I would want to work with the causes, the underlying causes. Like what I don't think, people don't just wake up one day and they're addicted to gambling, right? I mean, it has to do with a whole series of events, a whole series of life history, and a set of choices, um, and really exploring that, and really getting a sense of what do you get out of it, what makes it so hard to let go of. I mean, these are the kind of things that, and what could replace it, or what could you imagine, um, how could you imagine your life being differently? I think that's an important thing. I think these are the things that a person's going to have to deal with those questions anyway, right? What medication or not. I mean, I don't think I don't think you recover without dealing with questions like that, one way or another. Maybe the medication will help you to be better able to deal with those questions, but I don't think it means you can avoid them and hope to be better. I could be wrong. What is your experience with that? Do you find that there are people that with medication it's just like, wow, yet I'm done. I'm cured.
Um, it depends what addiction. I don't know any gamblers that have. I've heard of some supposed medications that can help with it, and a lot of times it's antidepressants that they're saying are going to also have, but um, I've heard a lot of people that were alcoholics or drug addicts that smoke weed. Now, they do marijuana and they call it California sober, whatever. And so I consider that a form of medication to stop them from doing something that was severely affecting their life or ruining it. And then maybe they're recovering from, but I still look at that as medication, whether that's the right way to do it or not. That's not for me to say, but, and I know obviously with like, opiates, heroin addiction, things like that. I know there's lots of medication that they use to wean people off and then hopefully get off. But I I hate taking pills.
Mhm.
Um, I I was I had like Yeah, I don't like, even if I have like a cold or a flu, I don't want to take pills for that. So I'm against medication. As I don't like I'm not against it. I think that modern science and medicine is amazing, you know. Um, but and I do get vaccinated, so that is another form of medication. But as far as like for addiction, it's funny, everything you were saying, I was kind of started getting my head turned. I don't know if I've ever gotten to the root of why I
Mhm.
gamble. I do remember my earliest memories of gambling was when I was a child playing cards for like matchsticks and pennies and stuff like that, and being really obsessed with that. I do remember it really ramped up in college. I got into sports betting in college, and then from then on, it was just like consume my life. And there was probably like a decade period where it was my whole life. It's like everything I thought about was led up to gambling. Like not every second of the day, but it was just like, okay, well, I'm going to do this, but after I do that, I got to get money and I got to move this, I got to sell that, I got to do that, you know. And I remember just how I don't quite know how I got there or why I got there, but and I don't know why I went back out when I did. I mean, I said it's when I moved to LA was when it really, you know, and I changed my surroundings and I took away a lot of my roadblocks, I call them, and I wasn't going to the same meetings or rooms and stuff. And but it's still something that, I mean, I'm 52 years old, and I would say, man, the majority of my life has my brain has been consumed with it. Even when
Mm.
I was sober, it was still always lingering there. But I do know also that staying busy has helped me. That was the first podcast of this series I ever did. I did with a comedian named Al Jackson, who's an addict, and we talked about keeping your day filled and staying busy helps a lot. That still doesn't get to the root of what it is, you know, but I prefer therapy and yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think everything that you're saying right now, I think is really great food for, you know, discussion and potentially a therapeutic, you know, connection. I was just thinking before with the medication. I mean, the one thing that I don't like about it, just conceptually, behaviorally, is it sort of externalizes things. You know, it's like I can't do this. You know, I don't have the tools to change my life for the better, but this pill does. You know, the this medication does. Um, I, y- y- you know, I'm not anti-medication either. I think that medication can be a helpful tool. I just think it's dangerous, in my opinion, to have it be the answer. How did you get better? I take this pill. That's how I got better. I think that's too simplistic.
Yeah.
And I think it, as I say, it
Yeah.
externalizes it. It doesn't allow the person themselves to really have anything to do with their recovery other than I found the right pill. That's it. I'm good. I mean, it
Yeah.
also,
I think a lot of people lean on that too. Yeah. I agree with
also,
you though. Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I said, I think a lot of people lean on that. I agree with you. Yeah. It's
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think do you not think that it kind of is maybe, speaks to the addict's mind of like, it's a simple fix or, you know, this is, I just need to do this and I'll be okay.
yeah. I've never thought about it, but yeah, I think yeah, 100%. Cause I've told the story before on the podcast when I went into the the first 12-step meeting, I really thought someone was gonna write me a check for my debt. And that's what one of the reasons I was going to the meeting was like, well, they'll write me a check and then I'll just go to these meetings and stuff because it's that quick fix. And I think yeah, I've never thought about that. I think you're yeah, that makes sense is
Mm.
the instant gratification kind of works in that way, you know, whether it's gambling or alcohol or drugs or whatever it is, like you're looking for that quick hit fix, you know. So
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, I think maybe there's something there. Yeah. Yeah. Do you I feels like addiction is especially gambling, but I think all addictions is becoming more rampant, you know. I know there was opioid crisis. Doesn't seem like we really solved that, which kind of moved on.
Mhm.
Gambling has never been, I mean, the way they've gamified it and put it on phones now is like super problematic, I think. alcohol is always going to be there. Why do you think, or do you think our culture is vulnerable to addiction? Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I'm just kind of thinking about the list that you ticked off there. Yeah, that opiate thing was just
Yeah.
tragic, how that unfolded so quickly and precipitously. Um, well, yeah, I think that I'll give a very short answer. Blunt. I think addiction is good for business. You know, I
Mhm.
think that addiction is a big part of various business models. Uh, I think it's basically the business model of social media. I mean, I think they make money based on how much of your attention they can grab and control. I think probably directly. I mean, the metrics, they get more advertising dollars if they can demonstrate to the advertisers that these people are going to be on the platform long enough to see your ad and see all of your ad and stay with it and see the next ad that runs in the next cycle and everything like that. So they have a whole team of technological geniuses just focused on capturing 15 or 18% of every child's brain activity in the Western world, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that we're good at, our culture, our society, we're good at business, and addiction is good for selling things uh, on one level. I guess that sounds extremely cynical. I guess maybe it is, but uh, I
No.
think that's one of the things, one of the reasons. So yes, I think that that's a part of it. Um,
Can I just say something? I don't, look, it doesn't sound cynical at all. Like my Mondays as a
mm,
comedian, this is not even an addiction thing, but it is related to what you're saying. I have to spend like, if I haven't edited clips, I edit my clips. I schedule them all to go out on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok and whatever and stuff. And then I gotta hope that I get the numbers that people watch them, the retention value, because those apps reward that. And then in
sure.
turn, it used to be 15, 20 years ago, you just got good at stand-up comedy. You told jokes, you're good. A club booked you, and now the club's like, how many followers do you have? Who are you going to bring in here? And now they don't even care if like I wouldn't say this, but like sometimes lesser experienced comics will come in and take these slots that you know are filling that. So
That is amazing. Yeah, I had not thought of that. That's
yeah.
right.
So
It's
oh,
they want to see they don't want to hear your routine, your content, your routine. They want to see your metrics. Yeah,
Hun yeah, and they're not happy about that either. I mean, most of the club owners would rather have a great comic come in there and the room be filled, but that the customers themselves are now like, "Well, I watched this person on Instagram and they 30 seconds do a video," and then they're like, that person's like, "Well, I better learn how to do stand up," or, this is just in my world at least, But, the phones, the addiction through all the apps and stuff like that, I mean, is for sure real. I mean, you just drive around town, you look in the car next to you at
yeah,
stoplights, someone's looking at their phone, everyone's looking at their phone, So,
absolutely.
um, yeah, I didn't mean to cut
Yeah,
you
you
off
were
in your
mentioning
but yeah.
you were mentioning before we started too about the sports gambling on the phone now,
Mhm.
which is, I mean, of course that was going to come. It's so funny how it's, I mean, I remember the bookies and things like that in the old days and stuff, and now and it was illegal, right? I mean, but now the money's too good to make it illegal, so it's
Mhm.
um,
Yeah, they
the
found a
corporations,
loophole. They found
right?
a loophole,
Well, the
And
loop, the loop. I mean, the loophole was we can make billions of dollars if we turn this into an app,
oh yeah, yeah.
so they said they just changed the laws. I don't think there was any. I, I don't know what the pretense was. Did they decide all of a sudden that sports gambling is a good thing after all? Um,
Well, I wouldn't have known it without this podcast, but I had a person on, a man on, his name was Jonathan D. Cohen. He wrote a book about the gamification and the rise of sports gambling through the phone stuff. And without getting back into that complete heat, but he said that it was daily fantasy, like the fantasy thing where like is someone going to go over or under amount of yards. There was a loophole in there where that was technically not considered gambling. It was fantasy sports. And that's how they proliferated that to all the states with the apps. And that's when they got the footholds in there. I mean, with the actual casinos and stuff, that used to just be Vegas and Atlantic City. There was a lot of Native American, tribes started proliferating casinos, but then it was just other people got involved through other loops. So I think it's just once those little tendrils get in, they're like, well, we did it this much. Now we're going to expand it that far. And that's, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, but going back to, yeah, our culture being vulnerable to addiction. So yeah, it's profitable, I think is, yeah, interesting. Yeah.
And yeah, and I mean, well, I mean, alcohol is such a interesting one. I mean, it's just so much. It's just a part of our culture. I do think people are drinking a little bit less than they used to, which is good. But um, in terms of drugs, I mean, I would. I don't know if I think you would agree or not, but I mean, it's one of the most destructive drugs there is, right? I mean, it's from a medical standpoint, certainly it just it just devastates your body, heavy drinking over a long period of time. And
Yeah,
it's
I
yeah.
I agree, and I don't have experience with it. I've drank before. I've drank to excess before, but it wasn't. But I've learned a lot on this podcast, is what I'm saying. So
Mhm.
I made some comment one time where I just said, "Oh yeah, but getting off alcohol probably isn't that dangerous or that hard or something." And then I got educated, which is one of the reasons I like doing this podcast, as to how dangerous that can be. Just to first of all stop what happens to your body physically. People that are alcoholics, um, and I don't think I had a full understanding because I
Right.
never went to any of those. That wasn't my thing, until I started doing this podcast, and it's really open. I mean, I knew. I mean, obviously, I've had friends that are alcoholics, and I've seen how it's affected their life, but I didn't. I don't think I gave it the respect. Is the right word.
Let me say something and just see if I just want to see if you agree with this at a very, very foundational level. I mean, I think I guess one of the questions would be like, what do all addictions have in common? And that's a hard one, but I think that what I would say is that um, they all have in common that the people that engage with them have this feeling of some form of emptiness within them. Something is not enough, you know? Their life is not enough in some way, some fundamental way. And they have to it's such a deficit that they have to be willing to kind of take risks, sometimes inordinate risks, to attempt to fill this up, you know, to fill this need. And
Yeah.
so I guess that would be my focus would be what is that emptiness? What is that need? And w- how did it develop that you feel that you have this deficit, this emptiness? What does that look and feel like? And how can we reframe that? You know? And that's hard work. I mean, maybe that's part of what is sort of unappealing about the therapy, but that needs to be figured out, I think. What is this emptiness that we're trying to fill? Um,
Uh, yeah. I yeah. I think you're asking me if I would agree with that. I think so because again, a running theme on this podcast is filling holes,
Mhm.
is what people always say. And my personal experience, um, yeah, I mean, for sure, my whole life, I've always had some feeling of inadequacy, you know,
Mm.
even when before I was a comedian, I was a marine biologist, and I, I, towards the end of my career at that, I specifically worked a lot with regards to manatee protection,
Mm.
manatees, and work with that. And sometimes I would have to go to meetings with like important people at all different levels, state and federal levels, and be, like 50 to 100 people in this room, and I'd have to stand up and say something. I wasn't even giving a presentation, just say something. Like someone's like, oh, Forrest might know that. And
Mm.
I would stand up and I'd have, the quote unquote imposter syndrome constantly, even though I had been doing this for a living for a long time. And it was like my life and studying it and working on it. And I think I felt that way even, like even into comedy, where I just maybe even recently started saying like, I'm a pretty good comedian, even though I was like getting on stage and people are laughing and people are paying me money to see me do it. You would, and this is a big theme with comics in general, is yeah, that sucked. Even that, like you could have a great set and you'd still, that sucked. Yeah, there was that one part where I messed up a word, and then someone else would have to tell you, yeah, but they really enjoyed you. Like the worst thing you could ever do is you talk to like a quote unquote civilian after you get off stage, and they're like, "That was a great show," and you're like, "Yeah, whatever, it was okay." And then and then you bring that onto them too. But I
Right.
definitely, and that's probably why I have a lot of comedians. I mean, I can find an endless amount of comedians to be on this podcast, is because I think there's a running theme there with that too. But yeah, filling, there's something in there like that you're trying
Mm.
to like replace, or fill that in with. And I think it's, yeah, makes sense.
Mm.
Can you
Yeah.
fix me? That's my question. No. Uh, in 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, that's a little bit of that's a little bit of the concept of this single session coaching. Not, it's sort of lowering the barrier to entry of getting started with trying to make a meaningful change in a short period of time. I would not, propose it as being a cure for addictions by any means, but I do think it's possible in a short period of time to really focus in on what could be more meaningful, what could be much more sustaining and meaningful and powerful and purposeful than this kind of short term fix or this short term kind of feeling of excitement. Um, y- you know, if there's emptiness, if there's something missing in life, I think it's usually that people want to know what is a life of purpose for me? What is I mean, I think you were talking about this before for yourself, that you were saying that doing this podcast has felt
Yeah.
very enlivening for you, and it's like, it's exciting and it's feeling like, this is part of your purpose. This is part of your personal mission. And that, I would imagine, fills a need, far better than these things that we do with addictions, that are really short term, really superficial kind of jolts of, hit dopamine hits or whatever. So, I mean, I
Yeah.
think that in that single session, we would really focus on what is your, what is your purpose? What is your meaning? What are your values? Um, how can you live a life according to that? And how can you gain more acceptance for yourself, more tolerance for yourself? I think that imposter syndrome is sort of an example of that. It's like there's a part of the imposter syndrome, and that's really, I know what you mean, and that's very common. It's that feeling that, like, who am I kidding? I'm nothing. I'm nobody. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And what it- w- you know, that's a very negative feeling, but we could turn that into acceptance of, like, sometimes I really don't know what I'm talking about, but I am I do have some knowledge and I am trying to learn more and I am trying to give the best counsel and advice that I possibly can. And I do have a background in this field and I am going to try. So it can be it can be skewed in a different way, in a more optimistic way. Um, and just finally, the last part of this that model is clarity. And with clarity, kind of once we have a sense of purpose and once we have a degree of self acceptance, the clarity comes from like, oh, wow, there's so much bullshit out there that I don't have to pay attention to. There's so many people and things that are trying to draw my attraction and my attention. And I'm very susceptible to being pulled towards them because I don't really know what my purpose is and I don't really like myself that much. So when you're in a vulnerable state that way and you're susceptible to kind of go in any direction that kind of feels at all good. But most of the stuff out there is not worth your time, you know? And
Yeah.
with clarity, we can see that more readily.
Clarity. Yeah, that's a good word. Clarity. Because I think as yeah, I think especially with addiction and my personal experience with it is you become so it's almost like your vision becomes blurred. I mean, like
Can I,
like
can I ask you? Can I ask you something? Before the show, you were saying some things about not, getting off of the gambling and then kind of going back to it, but using kind of rationalizations and justifications to kind of make it okay for yourself. Do you, can you say a little bit about that? What those might have been looked like?
I mean, when I was saying I went back out after my I was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the rationalizations I would give myself is that I would go back out gambling, and even though I knew it was wrong and that it was going to be destructive, that it's going to be okay because I'm going to win a bunch of money, and then that money I'll be able to solve my problems through gambling. Is all these people that I've hurt and I've destroyed their trust and stuff. I'm like, oh well, here's the money back that I owe you, or the damage that I did. And I can repair stuff with money, which is obviously you can't do that. But I would tell myself that as an excuse to go out and gamble. And
Mm.
so my rationalization process was just, you look back on it, it's super flawed, but in that moment, you're like, okay, everything will be, it's like the ego of like thinking like that's gonna make everything better. And also
Mm.
sometimes I don't know if it's the reverse of that. I would also just say, well, I've done all this damage already. I've already done all this. So what does it matter? Let me just go out and do more. Why don't who care? I've already screwed up my relationship with this person. So who gives a shit now? I'll just do it more.
Hmm. And the payoff, the perceived payoff would be this time it's going to work. This time I'm going to win.
Yeah. Or even worse, because gambling. And I don't try to make gambling the worst addiction, but you can win. And then that's
Yeah, yeah,
even worse for your brain where you're like, okay, well, yeah, I did fix everything that way.
yeah, yeah.
It's just it's just flawed thinking. I think, you just, I'm come from a science background, like I told you. And so I'm usually pretty rational and thought out and stuff. But with addiction, it just turns my brain into like, rewires it into this nonsense of just illogical thinking. So I think I said at the beginning, but I want to reiterate it is I do believe that, well, one of the reasons I'm happy to be doing this podcast with you is that I do believe people that are addicts should, and even if you're not an addict and you're listening to this, because there are some people that have written to me and said they're not addicts, but they still listen. I still think everyone can benefit from therapy. I think, what, one of the things I think people always say is another thing is like there's a cost. They start putting the idea of the money on it too. And they're just like, well, you got to pay for it. And this person's just in it for the money or it's too expensive or something like that. And I do think that that's unfortunate because I don't know how other countries work, but I know our healthcare system in this country isn't the greatest when it comes to covering people for things.
Yeah.
And I know therapy kind of falls in a gray area. It's almost like where dentists are. I don't know why dentists aren't covered. Why is dental separate? But then therapy a lot of times too is like, oh, we don't cover therapy too. It's just whole hodgepodge or system. I don't know if you want to speak to that at all, but yeah.
Yeah, the dental one is one that I wonder about too. It's like, yeah, the mouth,
Yeah.
that's how important is the mouth? Come on.
Uh,
Yeah,
yeah. It's in your body. Yeah.
right, it's part of your body. It's right there in your
Yeah.
head, right?
Crazy. Yeah.
It's near your brain even. Um, there, I'm sorry, how do I respond to what? To people saying
I
that.
just mean like that I just thought about that while we were talking. Like that's another stigma people have with therapy that again, I don't believe this, but people would say, and I'm doing this podcast so that people that are listening that aren't, I'm encouraging them to seek therapy. But I know one of the arguments would be like, oh, hey, yeah, it costs too much, or it's that person's just trying to make money. They don't care about trying to help me. You know, I'm sure you've gotten that before. You know, that's
Well, huh. Yeah, no, I haven't. Yeah, I mean, I'm not unfamiliar with that question. I have not heard it kind of put that directly. I mean, I don't quite see why somebody making a living doing something doesn't care about what they're doing in any realm necessarily. Um,
yeah,
I mean, people aren't going to say, you know, he doesn't care about being funny. He's just in it for the money, right? I mean, it's like you want to get paid and you want to do your work, right? I mean, but so anyway, what would I say? I mean, I think that, I think if somebody's got a negative predisposition to something or to therapy, for example, I'm not really in the business of like convincing them that they should do it and that they don't know what they're talking about and that they should do it because I don't think that's going to work anyway. I don't think it's going to work. I'm not going to be able to convince them in a couple of sound bites um, of something. And I don't think that, I think that therapy is a very, very mutual thing. It's like, I can't do anything to you. We would have to do this together. We'd have to really engage with this together. And so if half of that equation is highly skeptical of it, or even so skeptical that they kind of ruling it out, it's not really going to work. Now, what I would hope for that person is that they find other things that work. I don't think that therapy is mandatory. I don't think it's and I think maybe for some people it's not the right thing at all, or not the best thing, or not the most effective thing. The goal is to find what works. And so I would, if a person were to say that to me, for example, I would say, well, okay, can we talk for a second about what would work? Let's forget therapy. Not with me. I'm just curious as a human being, human being to human being, what do you think might be better? Or what do you think would be better? And how can you go about finding that for yourself? Um,
yeah,
I think for some people it might be they get into exercise, they get into sports, they get into using their physical body in new ways. They get into hiking, nature. I think nature is extremely therapeutic. Um, Maybe it's sort of just one of my perspectives that I think just sort of being out in the natural world, in natural sunlight, in the natural landscape can be very therapeutic. Just kind of watching how trees just do their thing. They're not self-conscious about not being a good enough tree or a big enough tree or something. They're just kind of doing their thing in there, and it kind of works because it's beautiful. And I think that can be sometimes a person can feel like, oh, well, they fit into nature as well. They're a part of the whole scene, and they don't have to be more than they are. Um, you never know what's going to be the thing that kind of works for somebody, but I think that a person needs to be invested in finding that answer. I think the
yeah,
thing that I think what I'm saying is that if I hear a person saying that, "Oh, it's a scam, you just in it for the money, it's all bullshit, it doesn't work." I'm hearing that and I'm saying, "I bet you've said that about a lot of things, not just therapy," you know?
Yeah.
And it's that attitude that is stopping you from finding what works for you. I don't care. I'm not in charge of therapy. I'm not, you know, I'm not trying to sell therapy to the uh, everyone in America. Um, your job is to find what works for you, you know?
Yeah. That's a good answer. You said you I think of this you started off saying you didn't really have an answer, but you did have that was all good. I think nature's great. I like it where you went with nature too. We went it was almost like we went on a little ayahuasca trip there for a minute. You were like you were like, "Trees are just being trees." I'm like, "I'm with you." Never thought about that, but the trees are just being trees. Um, I've also been fixated on the bird behind you a lot too.
Oh
When
yeah,
I
the bird. I like that, like yellow bird. Yeah.
yeah, I was trying
Yeah.
to remember. I did study downy woodpeckers for a little bit as an internship in college, but I don't quite know what kind of bird that is, you know?
Yeah, I should know what it is. I did know at one point. I can't remember. It's a New England bird. It's when I lived in New Hampshire, a local artist made it for me. So
It's really good. It's not like a chickadee because there's a black cap chickadee, but
not a
that's
chickadee.
white, but
Not a
maybe a
chickadee. No.
finch or something or yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. All right. Somebody that's watching this, join the conversation. Tell us what kind of bird that is. That's how distracted I got. It's like nature, and then I started looking at the bird. I was like, yeah, Aaron likes nature. Um,
That bird's not into therapy either. He's not. He doesn't care for it.
He's looking away, yeah. He's looking
Yeah,
doesn't
he's
even wanna
not.
be a part he's side-eyeing us. Doesn't even want part of this conversation, so here's a question I have. I really like your suit and your shirt. I really like are any therapists are you allowed to wear, like, just, like, an AC/DC T-shirt or something? Or do you have to, like never really thought about it. You have to be pretty formal when you're a therapist.
No, I don't know why. I just kind of felt like dressing up a little bit today, but
I
no,
I
but
appreciate it. Yeah.
yeah, um, no. Well, especially since a lot of therapy now is done, like everything is done online. So I think the dress code is out the window. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I felt bad when we
Maybe
logged on.
not try an AC/DC shirt, but that's interesting.
I
I
think
think
you
I'd go
should
I'd go with the Stones if I was gonna do that,
okay.
personally.
Yeah, I didn't I'm sorry. I dictated what kind of music you like, but I was thinking maybe you just come up with t-shirts that trees are just being themselves and you can just wear that t-shirt. You can be
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And that could
I
be the
was
whole
saying
section.
yeah, yeah,
We could stop early.
yeah. I mean, it really resonated with me more than I was just like, yeah, yeah. I love nature. I was like I said, I was a biologist before this, so and
I like
I
that. Yeah. It
oh,
it
go
can
ahead.
it's like it's just, animals, wildlife, nature, it's it's, um, it's a very different kind of experience than the world we've created.
Yeah. It's and to some people it's scary, but it shouldn't be, you know. I went to school in Ithaca College and in Ithaca, New York, and one of the houses I lived on was at the a dead end street, and just we were at the end of the street. And if you walked like 100 yards, you were in the woods, you know. And so there was all these trails and things that led to like lakes and waterfalls. And we would just like walk in there. I'd go in there by myself a lot of times. You just like listen to the wind go through the just the sound of
Mhm,
wind going through branches. It's like they're you get that idea of kind of what you're talking about. It's like alive. Like there's these are all
mhm,
living things and they're talking and yeah. You
mhm,
don't need medication, just walking in the woods. What one other question that I wanted to ask because it was a theme that comes up is like how important do you think community and connection is
mm.
in and just a healthy human being, but addiction as well, recovery, but also just being healthy. You know?
Yeah. I think I am a bit of an outlier on that question. I think the obvious answer is yes, more community is good and better, and we need people and we need others. And I don't disagree. I agree with that. Um, I guess I, however, feel that this stuff is much more of an inside game. It's much more of a personal thing for me, anyway. I find that like no community or other person can give you self acceptance. That's something that you have to give to yourself. It's an individual. It's a very personal thing, and I think self acceptance is the root, is the foundation of health generally. So, yes, community is good, absolutely. But I think that it's a healthy additional thing to you being already fundamentally okay. You know, I don't think it can,
Mm.
I, I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with what I'm saying. I don't think that I can feel like a complete mess. And by getting involved in a community that I can get better. I feel like they can enhance my experience, but I feel like I've got to find the foundational health. I guess I think of it as like the difference between a great meal and a great steak or whatever, and the sauce or the spice. The community is the spices and the sauce and the additions that enhance it and make it wonderful, but it's not the sustenance of it. That's something you give to yourself. That's my feeling anyway. I don't know what does any of
Yeah.
that resonate with you?
Yeah, for sure. Because I think, like I said at the beginning, I think at least for me, I pull from many different wells to try and feel better. But it did really resonate with me because you said self acceptance. And not that I've never heard that term or I don't understand what that means, but I just started thinking, like, you know what? I don't think I've ever really fully done that. And that's probably part of the problem. And going back to your question of like slipping in and out of addiction, like I've done stuff.
I think that
Um, yeah.
the thing that I've learned about it too is that I think one thing that turns people off about the phrase of self acceptance is that I think a lot of people hear it as being really passive and hear it as being like, oh, whatever, it's good enough, and it's not motivating. But I disagree. I think it clears the way for all kinds of things. You're accepting you're accepting yourself and inclusive of your limitations and your flaws, and you're you're saying it's worth it, and I'm worth it to pursue things that matter to me and to seek a better life. um, I don't need to punish myself for mistakes. I need to recognize bad choices. I need to recognize where my failings, but they are not a death sentence. I'm okay. And more than not a death sentence, I'm okay, and I am good, and I'm worth pursuing my dreams. Um, I think that can feel very liberating and very uh, and open up a lot of space to be more active. I think a lack of self acceptance kind of much more imprisons us. It's like, well, why should I pursue this better life, and why should I bother to do all of these good things? I'm a shit, I mean, I'm not. It's not going to change that, you know. So it shackles us to that um, inaction, I think. So I think it's the opposite, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. All right. Well, I encourage people to, this is me. I know you were saying you don't have to if you don't want to, but I encourage anybody listening to this podcast that is struggling with kind of trying to understand what's going on in their life, like with addiction or maybe anything else, to seek some sort of therapy. You can visit bostoneveningtherapy.com, poke around on the website, check it out. They've got all the therapists listed there, and um, you can see if that's something that you'd be interested in. And my personal opinion, like I said at the top, is if you want to go to a 12 steps meeting, that's great. I think you should also do therapy. You should do whatever that you should do as many things that you can to get yourself better. If those things are working, you'll know that they're working. And if they aren't, it's like you even said that too. Then don't do it. Go out into the nature, hug a tree. But
Yes.
thanks for being here. Again, Aaron Gilbert is part of the group Boston Evening Therapy, and you can go to bostoneveningtherapy.com to find out more. Thanks again for being here.
Thanks, Forrest. Really appreciate it.
Thanks again to Aaron Gilbert for being on the podcast. And that's our show. That's our show. You know how it goes. I just say a bunch of nonsense here at the end, but not total nonsense, because I always do tell you guys that if you are feeling suicidal, or you feel like you might harm yourself, or you are in any sort of crisis, make sure to reach out to somebody. The numbers are 988 in the USA and Canada. And, United Kingdom 008. Wait, 0800689565. Beat it with your long numbers. Australia 13 11 14. Getting shorter, but we need to make it shorter. Finland 09 25 25 0111. And then, the one that I hate the most, Germany 03044010607. What are you doing, Germany? Somebody wrote to me, by the way. I'm saying this, trying to be funny, but there are a list of suicide and crisis lines on the Wikipedia page. You can find those. And I know that nobody is listening to this podcast to get to the end to find these numbers, but I always want to remind people, as I've said many times, to reach out if you need help. Immediate help if you're in crisis. Somebody wrote to me though, that they said they might. I think they're kidding too, but they work a lot. They work a lot, and I don't even want to mess up what they said, but they were saying that they're going to try and maybe help get the Germany number changed. I think they're kidding, but maybe not. Maybe I should look and see what they said before I can't. It's just rambling on now. They work they're getting their doctorate, I want to say, in a field of addiction. I'm trying to remember the whole conversation, and that they work a lot with German groups or corporations or something like that. And that they were going to look in to get the Germany number changed. If I do nothing else in this podcast, get it accomplished, I want to get all of the countries' numbers changed to 3 digits. 988. It should be 988 around the world. That's the interesting thing about numbers. No matter what language you speak, and there's so many languages in what country, we all use the same numbers. So why not just have 3 digits? 030440110. So you're going to just stop dialing by the time you're. But anyways, I've rambled on too long about this. Thanks everybody for being here. I will see you guys next week. Love you all.